what I wanted to do was be able to provide a show that you could even look back a year from now or 2 years from now, whatever it might be, and take you through the 4 stages of heat stroke, through heat exhaustion, etc., so that you can pay attention, you can know about them to watch for it in other family members, maybe your children, yourself, of course. So what I want to do is just really quickly, really easily explain to you why this happens, what to look for, and then, of course, what we can start to do to prevent that. Hey everybody, great to be here with you today. Excited to get into today's show. I figured it was a pertinent one. It was one that was important, especially when we see all these rising temperatures throughout the United States. So first and foremost, there are certain risk factors. Keep in mind that those people over 65 or 70 are going to be more susceptible to potentially overheating. One of the reasons why is that when the body begins to age, unless you, again, try to keep that body biologically young, your body does not respond as quickly to the changes in temperatures. So the body's ability to thermoregulate, which just means to control body temperature, is not as adept. The same goes for children. So young children are not able to as quickly dissipate that heat from their body. So they can become flushed very easily. They don't sweat as easily as adults. They're just not able to in the same way. And therefore they can suffer from heat stroke the same exact way. Keep in mind that's infants as well. That's why we always recommend, always say, never leave your children in the car, even if it's only for a minute. A parked car, you never want to do that without that air conditioning kept on. Never keep those windows rolled up when you're in the car and there's no air conditioning. Again, children can overheat and infants much, much easier than adults. All right, so those with cardiovascular conditions, high blood pressure, heart-based issues, type 2 diabetes, certain medical conditions, again, are not going to be able to thermoregulate as easily, but also they're going to be more susceptible to the damage that is created inside of the body through heat. I'll get into the hypothalamus in just a moment, how it regulates temperature inside the body, but those effects are going to have a greater and more pronounced deleterious effect on the body if you're already suffering from a respiratory issue, maybe like COPD. If your BMI is above a 30, your body again is going to feel that heat to a much greater degree. Might be those cardiovascular issues, blood pressure, etc. All right, so for the most part, besides that, it's working outdoors, it's working in the sun, it's athletes. If you're in high school, if you're in college, or you're doing 2-a-days, football-wise, soccer, whatever it might be, you have to keep in mind that if you're not staying hydrated, and even if you are, you can still feel the effects of that heat. So let's start to watch for these signs. All right. Well, actually, before we get into the 4 stages, the 4 signs, I want to share with you just a little bit about what happens in the body as it's exposed to heat. And we're talking about like high degrees of temperature or just being in a place that's overly warm. So what happens is the body, the proprioceptors on the outside of the body, start to send signals to the hypothalamus that it's hot out, right? It's getting hot. And then what happens is when the core temperature, right, if your body maintains, let's say 98.6 or somewhere in the 98 degrees for a body temperature, once that begins to rise, again, the hypothalamus inside of the brain, which is essentially the messaging center, begins to send signals to the body. We need to cool down. We need to get in the cool. And the body then starts to do what? Well, for one, and you probably already know this, it starts to perspire. And the reason why it starts to perspire is to be able to release heat from the body, and that moisture on the outside of the body can begin to cool from the air and or evaporate. And what this is going to do is allow the body to then be able to cool itself down. Another thing that happens is when you begin to increase heat, the opposite happens to goosebumps. So if you get goosebumps when you're cold, you're increasing surface area on the skin, in order to be able to warm up. The hairs kind of stick up. You get those little goosebumps, right? Those little goose pimples on the outside of the skin. Well, the skin actually begins to flatten, and so do the hairs on the body to a greater degree. And this time, not to warm up, but actually to cool down, create less surface area to take in less heat. So once these processes begin to take place, if the body is not able to expel heat as quickly as it is being absorbed, we now encounter these 4 stages. So the first stage is called syncope, heat syncope. If you've never heard about this before, the body can start to feel faint. It can start to feel lightheaded. A person can literally pass out. And why this is important to look for is you don't want to get to that point, right? So the first stage doesn't necessarily mean you're going to faint, but you start to feel lightheaded and you start to feel maybe a little bit restless, a little bit irritable. You actually might start to feel a little bit nauseous, right? So look for that first sign. I know I've been there. I've certainly felt that way working outside during hot summers. I've felt that way playing sports, doing hill runs for some of those sports. When else can I think of a specific time? And at the beach before, I've certainly suffered from this as well. So this is important to look for that first sign. Again, some people heat up faster than others. In Ayurvedic medicine, they call it the Pitta-based body type. So you're going to want to bring an umbrella to the beach. You're going to be someone who tries to find the shade a little bit more maybe than another. All right. The second stage is heat cramping. So this is actually when the muscles begin to cramp up. Might feel like a little bit of a pulled muscle or a Charlie horse, a tightening of some of the muscles. Sometimes it happens in the calves, sometimes underneath the rib cage, sometimes the biceps. You're oftentimes going to hamstring, like a bicep-based muscle. Like the hamstring is basically the bicep of the leg, bicep of the upper body. You may start to feel it there first. So at this point, it's a sign that you just need to get out of the sun, get into air conditioning. I'll get into some of those preventative measures in just a moment. Let me walk through these first 4 stages, and then we'll get there. All right, the third stage is when we start to get a bit more serious, or a lot more serious, and this moves into heat exhaustion. So heat exhaustion is when we absolutely have to start to not only pay attention, but start to look for maybe medical-based help. And this is heavy sweating. This is feeling headaches, nausea. You might be vomiting. You might faint. If someone were to touch your skin, it would actually be cold and clammy, potentially. Your face might have what's called pallor. You might start to lose, instead of, usually when you're hot, your face gets flushed, right? That's a sign of you're hot. But when you're starting to get into heat exhaustion, you actually start to lose the coloring in your face a lot of the time. And there can also be a change in pulse. Sometimes in the beginning, it will be a rapid speeding up. And then as the body begins to become more and more exhausted from heat exhaustion, it will actually go into a protective state and the pulse may lower very, very rapidly as well. And again, you could pass out. So the weakness, the muscle weakness, the loss of the circulation, the outside, why it's trying to get that, basically, it's not, well, here's the thing, it's not able to thermoregulate anymore. The hypothalamus has lost control of that part of the body, and we are now having poor circulation through the body. We start to lose that blood towards the surface area of the body. It's more in the core. The body is hot, and we might start to feel vomiting, faintness, muscle weakness, etc. Want to get medical attention at this point. And the last stage, if heat exhaustion is not treated, it can lead to heat stroke. And what heat stroke is that your body temperature, if you were to take your temperature, your temperature would probably be about 103 degrees or higher. Again, I'm not providing any medical diagnosis, medical advice, medical treatments, or medical cures, but this is oftentimes when someone's suffering from heat stroke. There can be again, rapid or weak-based pulse, severe headaches, muscle weakness, fatigue, fainting, vomiting, nausea. It's everything what heat exhaustion is taken to that next level, except now the body could go into seizures. It could go into almost like you got a concussion where you are disoriented. You don't know where you are. You're starting to lose balance. You're getting the muscle cramps. And you can, of course, become unconscious. So that is the final stage of heat exhaustion or overheating. And I hope obviously that no one gets there, but we want to start to watch for these, right? And if we see someone we're with someone or ourselves is moving through the first four, right? Again, syncope is maybe a little lightheadedness, a little nausea. You're starting to feel irritable. The heat's really getting to you. And then you might start to cramp up. That's stage 2, right? And then we move into stage 3, which could happen quickly, where things start to get a little bit more severe, right? Muscle weakness, headaches, changes in pulse, fainting, vomiting, nausea to another degree, and heat stroke takes that to the highest level, where the brain is now affected as well as the nervous system by the high core body temperature. So if you get into stage 3, stage 4, you should seek medical attention to be able to safely bring down that core temperature. Now, a few things that we can do to not get into this position, hopefully in the first place, is the first, know how much sun we're able to get. Now, that can vary based on the day, because it can vary based on medications you're on, if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, if you already have a lot of inflammation, it can vary. So don't think that one day, you're fine outside for an hour, and another day only half hour, some days 3 hours. It could vary by day. That's why we have to look at our symptoms. A big part of this, though, is staying well hydrated, okay? So getting half your body weight in ounces of water per day regularly, really important. The other factor to that, especially if you're going to be sweating, is getting in enough electrolytes. Now, you can get electrolytes from whole foods, from fruits, from vegetables. All those things have a lot of great potassium and sodium, calcium, magnesium, etc. But you can also use our electrolyte solution if you choose to. Okay. Another one is, if you are exercising, you may want to make sure, if it's going to be outside in the heat, that you're eating something, right? So we can control blood sugar, we control the HPA axis with the adrenals, we can get electrolyte-based water, any of those things, in order to make sure that we're properly hydrated, that we're able to cool ourselves down. A lot of people don't like to do cold liquids. Totally understand, totally get it, especially from a digestive perspective. However, if you're outside and it's very hot out, do keep in mind that Ayurveda also says the way that you balance heat is with cold, right? And so that you're able to have a cold beverage on a hot day where you're going to be outside for an extended period of time. The last part is, know when you've gotten enough heat, right? So know when you have had enough heat and say, all right, I need to get out of the sun, into air conditioning, into the shade, drinking something cool, or even just taking a break. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, some people are better able to handle the heat than others. Know yourself, stay safe, enjoy being outside. But again, like I said, know those 4 stages. Hopefully today's show was helpful. If it was, do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.